Hey, Slick Talkers, thank you so much for tuning into this podcast. And I know that if you love this show, you'll also love my morning show called Good Morning Hospitality with my co hosts Michael Golden and Brandy Canali, as we spend 30 minutes every Monday morning to dive into the industry's top latest news and trending topics. So go check it out on wherever you find your podcasts at Good Morning Hospitality. And you can live stream with us on Monday mornings on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and of course, YouTube. Now, I hope you enjoy this episode. Hey, Slick Talkers. Welcome back to another episode of Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast. And I'm super excited because you guys gave me so much good, positive feedback about last week's episode. For the first episode that I've actually done in a long time, being solo, highlighting past guests and clips from them. So we're going to do the same thing again this week. But I just got back from the Podcast Movement Conference out in Dallas. Had a great time. So I want to give a couple shout outs to Julie George, Steve and Micah from Live Let Thrive podcast on our hospitality.fm network, and of course to a bunch of others that we got to meet at the Podcast Movement Conference. It was so good to meet you guys in person. Finally got to meet Claire, who's our head of operations and production, in person for the first time as well. So what a special week it was. So I just want to say thank you to everyone who just made that event and that conference so amazing. To dive into this episode, we are going to be highlighting two previous guests, and I want to make sure that before we go too deep, that you stick through all the way to the end. And I know a lot of podcasters say this, stick to the end, we have this and that. I really mean it. I have some bonus content and bonus information to share with you. So stick through, let me know. Message me on LinkedIn, Instagram, whatever your preference is. Go ahead, give me a shout out if you're going to be attending any of these events in the future, and just how you're enjoying the show would be amazing. So now that we're diving in, we're going to go hear from our amazing guests. I'll introduce them right after the intro in 3, 2, 1. You're listening to Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast, a podcast for those who are in and around the hospitality industry who love, live, and breathe what they do. You can join us for candid and unscripted conversations with hospitality experts and founders as we go deeper into their personal stories while they're sharing their triumphs and trials that got them to where they are today. I'm your host, Will Slickers, and you're listening to an episode of Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast. Now, let's begin. All right, to kick this episode off is going to be Robin Cragen. And Robin Cragen is the co-founder and CEO of Moving Mountains, and he is just a phenomenal leader in the vacation rental industry. They've been doing this for so long, for 20 years, for over 20 years actually. And Robin just has so much insight on how they built their hospitality culture within their teams and what it looks like to really anticipate the guest needs. So the theme and the structure of this episode is really going to be setting the standard of guest experience. And I want you to really focus on what Robin says to the things that are happening when guests really don't know what to expect. They know to expect a wonderful vacation home, but they don't know to expect is wonderful service that makes them want to come back again and again and again. And I think Robin articulates this very, very well. So here's this quick clip from Robin Cragen's episode. If you enjoy what you hear, then go ahead, check out the show notes, and go give the full episode a listen.
I agree. And I feel that you have to listen to every single guest and understand what their goals are at the same time as we're trying to help them realize this is what we can do for you. Your expectations of a beautiful home, we're going to deliver on that. But if you'll let us to do more, you'll have a better time. And oftentimes, I think that the first time people stay with us, they're not realizing just how much we will do. But it doesn't take long before they start to notice that really everyone in our team is listening and looking for what else can we do to make sure that your experience is perfect. I had an incredible takeaway from another property manager who's actually here in this town, Sarah Bradford from Steamboat Logic Company. And she shared this podcast story about the face of your business. And I feel like that is something that we were able to use that story to really help our staff understand that I may be the person who's in the CEO role, but I'm truly not the day-to-day face of our business. It is our maintenance guys and it is our shuttle drivers and it is our staff that are actually out in front of our guests. And it's their job. They need to know that it's their job to listen to the guests and find out what else are we missing or what else could we do to help you. And it's right down to the details of what you're teaching them is, can you find out something that the guest wouldn't pick up the phone and call us about? Is it the squeaky door in the bathroom? Is it the dripping faucet or something like that? That if we could clue into that and we can get that fixed by the time they get back from skiing, then that's an expectation exceeded.
Yeah. And it goes into like the normal hospitality practice of anticipating the guest needs before they know they need it. If I was staying here, if this door was squeaking, I probably wouldn't tell the front desk or tell anybody there, but it would still be annoying in the back of my head. And so being able to recognize that as a provider of service is really key. And I love that you said that. One of the questions I originally had planned was to ask why you love doing what you do in order to offer this higher service. But I actually want to shift into what's one of your favorite moments or memories that reminds you of why you love doing what you do?
Yeah, it's hard to think of one in particular. It's that saying, that's it, that same saying, this has been one of the best vacations we've ever had. And I realized that from when we got to know some of these guests that sailed with us on the yacht and realizing the great travel experiences that they had that they were comparing this to. And when you start to hear that kind of feedback, you realize that doesn't come easy. And I don't take it for granted. And I realized just when we get surveys back from our guests now, and not only just a survey with a score, but many times with a personal thank you for creating something that was so much better than they experienced. And that validates for not just for me, but for our whole team about why it is. This is why we do what we do. And this is why the second time that people call, it's really not as if you're competing to sell them a commodity. They're calling you because they want to have another experience similar or even better than the last time that they stayed with us at Moving Mountain. They realize after the first time that they stayed with us that, yes, we will move a mountain for you guys. That's what it takes. We want to make sure you will go home as a happy guest. That's what we live for.
Okay, as I'm literally editing this clip, I'm taking notes because what Robin said throughout that small, short clip has so much context and key takeaways that I think anyone from no matter what type of properties you have, if you're an urban host, a luxury host, if you are a management company with over 1,000 properties, I think there's so many key takeaways. And the one thing that I love is that Robin said, if you let us do more, we can go above and beyond. And I think sometimes guests have gotten so used to this lower standard of operations and hospitality that sometimes they actually don't let us do more. And it's hard because us trying to do more can impact their guest experience and their stay with us. So I love that Robin tied that in with we are listening. Our staff is listening. It's super key to remember to listen more than we talk. And trust me, as a podcaster, a guy who literally makes a living off of talking, it's hard. It's very hard. That's why I love interviewing so much, is because I can interview people and I can listen and I can properly pull parts of the conversation to move the direction of the conversation the way I want it to. And I think we could do that with our guests. And I think that when we focus on listening and telling our guests that we can do more for you if you let us, please let us do more. We would love to. Communication is classic and it's key. So I just love that. Another big takeaway for me, just from that small clip again, is Robin going into your team and staff need to be your heart and soul. He may be the CEO, but he is not the face. When a guest books a property with Moving Mountains, they're not seeing Robin's face at check-in. They're not seeing Robin's face at the maintenance request that comes in. Yeah, they may see Robin through the office, or if he actually is going through a bunch of properties with his team, yeah, they'll probably see him. But guess what? They're going to see his team more. And I think that's super important to remember as we're growing our businesses, whether it's in short-term rentals in different categories to boutique hotels to whatever. Your team is your heart and soul. So invest in that. Our properties are an investment, but our team is a bigger investment that's going to move the needle forward. Now we're going to dive into a clip from an episode with Sarah and Annette. Sarah and Annette are the hosts of the Thanks for Visiting podcast, and another shout out to them for getting to hang out all week while we were in Dallas at the Podcast Movement Conference. Loved spending every moment that we got to with them, and we all learned a ton. So if you haven't already heard their podcasts, go check them out at thanksforvisiting.me. That's such a great spot, and it's such a great resource for anyone in the hosting and vacation rental management business. In this clip, though, we are going to get more of the business side. So yes, we're focusing on guest experience, and guest experience is super key and important. But guess what? Just like I said, Robin points out that your team is the heart and soul. And in order to have that heart and soul operate smoothly and providing that guest experience level that should be the standard, you need to have your processes and systems in place. I love what Sarah and Annette go into about how their handbook is just super key for their business, and that if they were to be knocked unconscious today, that their business could run without them. So we're going to play this clip really quickly, and then at the end, I want to tie into why I left the part of Sarah's why in this clip and how it all ties together.
But I'll also say, and Willie, you can attest this working in the hotel, in like the corporate hotel industry too, is we also know the importance of whenever you build out a role in your business, and this is for your listeners who are short-term rental hosts, entrepreneurs, you build a handbook so that when those people move on, and they inevitably will, you can plug someone else into that same role and they are equipped, they are educated, and your business keeps running smooth. It's not a perfect process, especially when you're, in your infancy, but the more you can develop those roles and those responsibilities into checklists or a handbook or something tangible that you can literally pass on to someone else. Our first product, which is not available anymore, but we call it the hosting handbook, because we just believed in okay, chapter 1 is these 3 things. So that if you were for these are for those hosts out there who just may host one property, right? But they want a weekend off, they want a week off, and they don't want to be, you need a handbook to pass off to your bestie, you know what I mean? Or your partner or whomever, so that your business can run without you for that short period of time. So I don't know about you, Will, but there's an episode I listened to some podcast. They called it the what's it called when you're unconscious?
Oh, I know what you're. Oh my gosh.
Gosh darn it. You hit your head and you're unconscious. Will your business run without you?
Coma.
A coma.
Oh,
the
yeah,
coma.
yeah.
It was a Bigger Pockets episode. And that really spoke to me. So from day one, I'm running my own business. My goal, not in the first year or two, right? But my goal is that it will run without me. And I am the orchestrator, and then eventually I'll pull myself from that. And then I'm just looking at it above. Do another project, right? But that has always been the goal. So checklists, handbooks, all those sorts of things.
Now, I know you're enjoying this clip, and this is a perfect time for me to jump in and talk about not only handbooks for your team, but handbooks for your guests. And when I'm talking about handbooks for your guests, I really mean a guest book. And the best place to get a guest book or a guide book for your guests is to go to hostfully.com and tell them that Will Slicker sent you. Use the code SlickTalk20 to get 3 months free, absolutely free, of their digital guidebooks. This is the best product to use to make sure that you are anticipating your guests' needs and making sure that they have everything they need for your property and their stay with you. Now, back to the clip with Sarah and Annette. I wasn't planning on mentioning this, but Corey, take notes because we're going to build out the playbook a little bit more. But no, I think that
it's good because you can jump back in. If Sarah's gone and she does something, it's oh shoot, what do I need to do? It's I can this is what happens in this section of the business. So that's the other part too. When you have those systems, if once trust but verify, you can do it, but then if you're away from it for a while, make sure that you can slip back in and take care of it. And that's where those checklists become really, really important. It's oh, okay, I remember how to do this. I'm back. I can do it.
I love that you just said trust but verify. That's my favorite military term, because every time I would do something, my sergeant would go check on it and he'd be like, all right. And I'm like, well, you don't believe me? He's like, trust but verify. Trust but verify. I don't care if you're an expert at this. I'm going to double check your work every time.
For instance, we have inspectors and we look at over their work after they've done an amazing, amazing job turning over a property. And they're like, well, are you checking my work? It's no, we're trust but verify. One set of eyes is never enough. Yeah. And why not have a second set of eyes looking in the refrigerator and in the dishwasher and checking the bed for, just the whole property. So that's the trust but verify is just making sure you're giving that next level experience.
Yeah, which is what I saw recently on your Instagram. So that was perfect. Great plug-in. Well, I want to go into kind of a final or wrap-up question for you too, because we talked about, like what what your learnings are, all this other stuff. But I really want to know what drives you.
My why is to leave this world better than I found it. And I've had a lot of things that have driven me to be the star of a show, quite literally. From the time I was in, 3, I wanted to be the lead, and I wanted to sing high and sing loud, and that's all good and well, and entertain people, make them feel good. And along that journey, I learned how to serve people, quite literally. Getting a drink from this place, taking it to their table, and being a part of that exchange of goods and services. And I've become really good at it. And I used to be so against that part of my life so that I could, be the star of the show. But man, did I thrive in that role, and was I good at it? And I, as a performer, just communicating with people and being able to read them, and it's just a gift of mine. And so I've learned how to not be so mad about it. And I've learned to okay, I can now show others how to do this, how to make it fun, how to make it safe, and continue. There's so many, especially females in this. I think females are the biggest audience or users on the Airbnb platform. I know it's just one OTA, but it's the most popular probably.
Yeah.
And females are the biggest. So it's also I've struggled with my own operations back when I started in 2010. I knew nothing about real estate when I first bought in New York City. And so I made so many mistakes. And it's this is my way of leaving the world better than I found, that I can at least share with people my trips and falls and successes and help them on their journey, because it's a popular industry and I want to see it thrive. So that's my why.
Okay. I don't try to overhype anything ever, but there's so many key takeaways. And this is why I love Sarah and Annette. They do amazing work in the industry, but then they also really just provide great golden nuggets of value. And I know if they're listening to this right now, they're dying laughing because of some inside jokes and golden nugget moments from Podcast Movement. So thank you, Sarah and Annette, for doing what you do in the industry. But man, for anyone out there that's in entrepreneurship, whether this is short-term rentals or hospitality or whatever type of entrepreneurial journey you're in, you could be literally in e-commerce. I don't care. There's so many key takeaways from that clip alone. So not only from Robin Cragen did we hear some great takeaways about the heart and standard of hospitality to always be listening to, ask your guests to allow you to do more for them. But the biggest takeaway, if you can get anything from this episode as an entrepreneur, is to trust but verify, build the systems, let your drive power you, and use it to move the needle forward. Now, there's a lot of phrases in entrepreneurship that get thrown around. I think it's community, culture, all these other things, whatever. Moving the needle forward is also one. But I also find that your drive, your why, is super important. I think that really does make the difference of a good business to a great business. And so when you're thinking about your why and how it applies to short-term rentals and guest experience, please just keep in mind that you need to keep refreshing yourself daily on why you're doing what you're doing, because a lot of people lose purpose in what they do because they get so used to going on autopilot. And I think when you use your why, it can really cause a ripple effect throughout your business and your life. So that's just my advice. I think we all have our why. I have mine, and I would love to hear yours. So as a promise, this episode is wrapping up. If you take any takeaways, grab them from this episode. If you liked those clips, go back to the full episode with the link in the show notes, and I promise you guys will not be disappointed. And then stay tuned. After this outro plays, I have some stuff to share with you, and we're going to cover a couple different topics. So once again, thank you for being a part of the Slick Talk family. If you're a Slick Talker out there, I would love to hear from you directly. So find me on LinkedIn, Will with 1L, Slickers, or you can go on to Instagram. Slick Talk Pod is the handle there. And just super thankful to be doing what we're doing. And we'll catch you all again next week. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you to our show partners for making Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast, possible. We hope you enjoyed the show, and we would love to connect with you outside of the podcast. So you can follow us on all of our social media channels for daily hospitality content, or find us on slicktalkthepodcast.com. And don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode. I'm your host, Will Slickers, and we will see you guys all again next week. You've made it to the end of the episode, and I'm super glad you're here. So, a couple announcements to share with you. I want to connect more in person with anyone who listens to the show or supports what we do with hospitality.fm. So, I'm going to give you a couple dates and a couple events that if you're attending, go ahead and shoot me a message. And I'm going to give you our podcast number. So, this podcast number is exclusively for the show. This is not my personal number. You will not get spammed, and you will not be annoyed with all these random texts. This is really just for me to stay in touch with anyone who supports the show and the community that we are building. So the number is 720-807-3367. I'm going to say that one more time, 720-807-3367. Shoot me a text that you're going to be attending these events. That would be great. And I actually have a couple of specials for you if you do. So the first event coming up this September, the official dates for the VRM Extravaganza in Orlando, Florida is going to be September 19th through the 21st. Now, this is going to be a great conference because HFM, or for anyone that's new, hospitality.fm, the podcast network that we run and founded back in 2021, is going to be there. We're going to have a presence. We're going to have a few of our podcasters there. We would love to not only connect, but maybe even interview you and have you on the show. I would love to meet you. So please let me know if you're going to be attending at the VRM Extravaganza this September 19th through the 21st. Would love to meet you there. And then the moment I have been waiting for so long. If you have been a listener for a while, you may have heard of my good friend, Damian Sheridan, who is the founder and managing director of the Book Direct Show. Now, the Book Direct Show has been overseas, whether in London or in Spain, throughout the last few years. I would say even prior to COVID. And the cool part is that he and I have partnered up to bring the Book Direct Show to the States. Now, we're hosting the conference in Miami officially this coming October. So if you go to bookdirect.show, and of course, there's always a link in the show notes. If you go to bookdirect.show, you're going to get your ticket right there. And if you get your ticket right there, guess what's included? I'm going to tell you. You are getting the ticket for the price of 2 events because, again, if you've been a listener for a while, you may have heard of my Destination Air Awards. And the Destination Air Awards started in 2020. And it was a time of just weird. You guys all remember. Come on. So we created the awards to recognize those operators who really just kept going. They weren't looking for recognition. They weren't in the press. They were just out there creating good experiences, not just good experiences, but remarkable experiences. And to plug in another guest from a previous episode, Ryan Snyder is the founder of Martin North, based out in Cannon Beach. I had the privilege to work for him in his properties on the Oregon coast. And man, we had a conversation about what we do. What does it mean to be hospitable? What is hospitality? And Ryan says to me, Will, we are people that are wired to create remarkable experiences that are anticipated and shared. And I took that phrase to heart. And that is what a Destination Air is. So if you're going to be at the Book Direct Show, not only are you going to get the best knowledge and information on growing your brand and Book Direct strategies, but you're going to get a nice award ceremony that night, the first night of the conference, where we're going to dress up a little bit. We're going to have some cocktails. We're going to be recognizing our peers from all over the world. The first year that we ran this award, we had over 70 nominations from people all over the globe. Robin Cragen, the co-founder and CEO of Moving Mountains, is an award winner. He actually won this award the first year that we did it in 2020. And that's why we see this being so important to recognize people like Robin and like you. If you are a listener that feels like you are wired to create remarkable experiences that are anticipated and shared, guess what? You're going to have more coming to you soon. We're going to have a whole form where you can nominate yourself, you can nominate your friends, you can nominate your peers in the industry to get recognized. And we're only going to do 7 of them. We're not going to do anything crazy and no special categories. It's really just about being the best at giving hospitality and guest experiences. Everything is in the show notes, I promise. Bookdirect.show. You will love it, and we'll hopefully see you all there. And thank you so much again for listening to this episode. We'll see you all again next week.